When you hear the phrase, the Middle Ages, your mind instantly drifts to gloomy stone castles, knights clad in heavy, clanking armor, princesses trapped in high, lonely towers, and doctors in those strange, beaked plague masks. Movies, novels, and media have painted a deeply grim picture, a dark age, drowning in plague, superstition, torture, and ignorance. A 1,000-year void between Rome's fall and the Renaissance's light. An era where science lay dormant, art only copied the past, and women had no rights or voice at all. But what is the real truth hidden beneath that veil? Was the Middle Ages truly a dark age as we've been taught? Or is that simply a massive, convenient prejudice, carefully crafted by Renaissance thinkers who trashed their ancestors to make themselves shine brighter? Today, we are going to shatter every one of those illusions. We will travel back through time and step into the authentic world of the Middle Ages, where medicine was far more than superstition, where art soared to breathtaking spiritual heights, and where women, despite limits, found power and voice. And this story begins with one shocking revelation. Most of what you think you know about the Middle Ages is dead wrong. Let's begin with the thing everyone obsesses over: medicine. In popular imagination, a medieval doctor is a creepy figure, draped in a black robe, wearing a grotesque beaked mask, brewing strange potions from bizarre herbs, and treating illness by burning skin or draining blood. But that grotesque image is not just inaccurate, it's a deep insult to countless physicians and researchers. These were people who dedicated their lives to healing others. Because the truth is this: medieval medicine was far more advanced than you realize. And I'm not just talking about herbal folk remedies. I mean an organized system with schools, hospitals, and real research. As early as the 9th century, the Islamic world built large hospitals. They had isolation wards, surgery rooms, and medical libraries. These hospitals did far more than just treat the sick. They actively trained new generations of doctors. They carefully recorded every symptom they observed. They analyzed the root causes of diseases. A physician named Al-Razi wrote over 200 medical books. He was the first to distinguish smallpox from measles. That breakthrough happened in the 10th century. In Europe, Salerno Medical School in Italy opened in the 9th century. It trained both men and women as physicians. Not witches, not quacks, real, qualified doctors. They studied anatomy from animals and sometimes human cadavers. They knew disease wasn't caused by demons or dark curses. It came from an imbalance of bodily fluids. Yes, that theory wasn't entirely correct by modern standards, but it laid the essential foundation for modern physiology. They used anesthetics derived from opium and henbane plants. Women in labor received guidance on hygiene and safe birthing positions. Surgeons stitched wounds with fine silk thread. Bandages were changed regularly to stop infections. All of this happened centuries before modern medicine emerged. So why do we picture this era as medically backward? Partly because many medieval medical records were simply lost, and partly because Renaissance writers deliberately buried their predecessors. They labeled medieval doctors quacks to boost their own reputation. That's understandable from a historical perspective, but that doesn't make their dismissive narrative true. Think carefully about this question. If medieval medicine was truly that terrible, then how did humanity manage to survive at all? How did cities continue to grow and flourish? How did the population steadily increase? Clearly, they were doing many things right. Now, let's shift our focus to art. What is the standard image of medieval art? Flat, lifeless paintings. Faces completely devoid of expression. Stiff, unnatural poses. Figures that appear strange and awkward. Then the Renaissance arrived and fixed everything with perspective. But let's pause for just a moment. Look a little more closely at those so-called primitive works. Those paintings were not failures. They were painted according to a different philosophy, a deliberate, intentional choice, one filled with profound spiritual meaning. Consider this perspective. Imagine you are a medieval painter. Your goal is not to mirror the world like a camera. Your purpose is to capture the very essence of the soul, to tell a sacred story, to reveal a divine miracle, to show viewers the glory of God, saints, and heaven. So do you really need mathematically precise perspective? No. What you need is sacredness. You need shimmering gold. You need radiant light. You need timelessness, infinity, and absolute stillness. Because heaven is not a place with physical depth. Heaven exists beyond all earthly dimensions. Those expressionless faces weren't a lack of skill. It was intentional. to show figures untouched by earthly pain. They had achieved eternal peace. That is not easy to paint convincingly. It takes incredible mastery to make a face both human and divine, and we must not forget the magnificent cathedrals. Those Gothic churches with soaring pointed arches, enormous windows glowing with stained glass, and statues carved with extraordinary detail. Those structures were true engineering miracles. They built them without any modern machinery, without any design software, without electric cranes or power tools. Just hands, muscle, mathematics, and deep faith. A cathedral like Notre Dame took hundreds of years to complete. Generations of masons and carvers devoted their entire lives. They built something they would never see finished. They did it not for money. They did it not for fame. They did it because they believed they were building a gateway to God. Now compare that to any modern work of art. What a stunning contrast. But what about music? The Middle Ages produced the most complex polyphonic hymns ever known. They invented the musical notation we still use today. They composed chants that still move modern listeners. All of it memorized, passed down orally, then written in monasteries. And don't overlook the hand-painted books, those illuminated manuscripts sparkling with gold, blue, and crimson. Every single initial letter was a miniature masterpiece. Every single page was a work of art. They had no printing presses, they had no design software, they only had their hands and their devoted hearts. And now I ask you this question. Was that truly a dark age for artistic expression? Or was it one of the most brilliant creative periods in history? Now let's move to perhaps the most controversial topic. Medieval women. What is the popular image we hold? Women who only gave birth, wove cloth, and prayed silently. No rights, no voice, no opportunities. Completely crushed under male domination. But the truth, once again, is far more complex and far more fascinating. First, remember, the Middle Ages was not one single era. It lasted an entire 1,000 years. 1,000 years is an incredibly long stretch of time. England in 500 AD was utterly different from England in 1400 AD. Women's rights changed across time and place. But one standout fact remains. In many parts of medieval Europe, women had more rights than we assume. Women could legally own land. Women could sign binding contracts. Women could write their own wills. Women could run their own businesses. Women could inherit property if there were no male heirs. In some medieval cities, women became skilled craftswomen and traders. They were weavers. They were seamstresses. They sold ale. They sold household goods. They were active, vital economic contributors to their communities. What about noble women? They could manage vast estates while their husbands were away. They could defend castles in times of siege. They could negotiate peace treaties. They could file lawsuits in courts. They could be writers, poets, and philosophers. Take Christine de Pizan as a powerful example. She was a female writer living in France in the late 14th century. She wrote a book called The City of Ladies. In it, she passionately defended women's rights. She challenged the male scholars of her time. She used logic and historical evidence. She was not just a female writer. She was a bold fighter for women's equality. And that happened in the 14th century, not the 20th, not the 21st. So why do we imagine medieval women as completely powerless? Perhaps because we focused on laws, but ignored real life. Perhaps because we fixated on church doctrines about original sin. But we forgot the church also venerated Mary as history's most powerful woman. Perhaps because we obsess over witch hunts. But most witch hunts happened in the Renaissance, not the Middle Ages. In fact, the Middle Ages had female doctors, female alchemists, female poets, female saints deeply respected by all, female nuns who ran hospitals and schools, all real, all documented, all brushed aside by modern historians. So next time someone says the Middle Ages was male-dominated, remember Christine de Pizan. Remember the female merchants in European cities. Remember the female doctors and writers. They existed. They fought. And they succeeded, within the limits of their time. So, after exploring all of this, what have we truly learned? We have learned that the Middle Ages was not simply a dark age. Their medicine was systematic and organized. Their art had deep spiritual meaning and technical skill. Their women possessed voice and influence. All of it paints a picture far richer than textbooks suggest. The story of a dark, brutal, ignorant Middle Ages was largely invented by Renaissance thinkers. They wanted to assert their own superiority. They wanted to break all ties with the past. They succeeded so completely that we still believe their version. But think carefully about this. If the Middle Ages were truly so dark, then how did they build the first European universities? How did they invent eyeglasses? How did they create mechanical clocks? How did they preserve thousands of ancient manuscripts? How did they lay the foundations for modern science and law? The answer is simple. They were not dark at all. They worked tirelessly. They thought deeply. They created constantly. And they passed down a massive legacy we still benefit from today. So the next time you see a medieval painting, a Gothic cathedral, or read about a female doctor from that era, don't think you are looking at a backward age. You are looking at a colorful, complex, and extraordinary era. An era where humans, with all their limits, reached for greatness. And perhaps, just perhaps, we still have much to learn from them. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If this story changed how you see the past, please like, subscribe, and share. Join us again as we uncover another forgotten chapter of history. See you next time on our next great historical journey.